Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today is October 5th, 2020, and this is episode 9 of the Zodcast. And now, without further ado, I'll be getting right to the topics right after I give a couple shout outs. One, always go check out Black Box Online Radio with my buddy Ned. He always has some good Zodiac stuff over there. Definitely get some deep dives in the conspiracy type stuff, the multiple killer theories and all that, which is great. I don't get into those a whole lot, but if you want to check those out, definitely go over to Black Box Online and subscribe to it if you haven't already. And also, Professor Stewart, man, thanks for what you did. Appreciate it. You know what it is. And I am forever in your debt, sir. Also, I was just kidding about the Tom Voight things to you guys over there, James, whoever, I was just kidding. But the fact you think I'm rich and famous, I'll let it go. I'm not, but if you think that, I'm good with it. Anyway, I want to real quick go over the photos at the beginning before I forget that too. But the first one is just a cutout from the Napa Register newspaper, and it was printed just days after the Lake Berryessa attack. And I thought it was interesting because obviously Lake Berryessa is in Napa, so that's the newspaper of record for that Zodiac attack. And the newspaper specifically states about the suspect at Lake Berryessa, and I'll quote, "A tall, stocky man wearing a dark hood and dark clothing," end quote. So that's just days after the attack in the paper of record over there in Napa. It says a tall, stocky man. So just wanted to point that out. I know anyone with a skinny suspect doesn't like it when I do that, but I had to. Anyway, I have a picture of Jerome. Hey, man, how you doing? I haven't heard from you, Jerome, but I always see you give a like on all the videos. So Jerome's with the French Wrecking Crew. He does a lot of true crime stuff, and he's over there in Belgium, I believe. But I think I'm going to be doing a show pretty soon with Jerome. We tried to do it before, but a couple things came up. We got busy, but we're going to do a show together on Jerome's platform. And I think it's a live chat. Those are always fun because people can type in questions and stuff like that. And then also you'll see a picture of 2 birth announcements, and this is probably something you didn't know already, but it's not earth-shattering, but it's kind of interesting in the world of Zodiac lore. It's always good to know something more about it that you didn't know the day before, and that is the first birth announcement. I think the one on the left-hand side is for one Arthur Lee Allen, who was born on December 20th, 1933, and he was born in Hawaii, and it lists the maternity home as Kapiolani Maternity Home. Hope I'm saying that right. And that was in Honolulu. So the other person is one Paul Stewart Depew, who was born on, I think, April 3rd, 1934. And that announcement came out on April 6th, by the way. And you might know him better under the name Paul Stewart Avery. Of course, his birth name was Depew, and he got adopted later by Howard Malcolm Avery, I think when he was around 6 years old. But what's interesting is Paul Avery was also born at Kapiolani Maternity Home in Honolulu just 13 short weeks after Arthur Lee Allen, and both their fathers were lieutenants in the Navy. And the Arthur Lee Allen birth announcement has the street that they were living on. It's a private home. It still is there today, and doesn't say where Lieutenant Depew was living, but the odds are those 2 guys probably knew each other. I know there was a lot of Navy guys in Hawaii then, but chances are they probably did because they were both lieutenants, and from what I can tell, they were at least there another few years, both of them. So I think Avery comes back, I think, with him, and I don't remember when his parents got divorced, and he winds up being adopted by Howard Malcolm Avery, who was, of course, in the Navy too. Howard Malcolm Avery was a Navy pilot. But interesting, that those guys were born in the same place, same maternity ward, just 13 weeks apart. So there's another weird connection. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but just kind of a small world type deal. And I was looking more. Paul Avery, I think, is always the key to everything. I really do. I think he knows more. It's really strange that Cheney went to the same little junior college as he did. Of course, I know I beat that a lot, but now there's a weird thing with Allen and now Avery. But, Avery's biological father that it talks about there, Paul Stewart Depew Sr., that's who Paul was named after, of course, he had a lot of mental problems that I wasn't really aware of. And everybody knows that Paul Avery got a little skittish in later years, but his father had some really weird mental problems. He was smart. He worked on submarines in the Navy and diving stuff and how they would dive. I mean, pretty technical stuff. Of course, he was a lieutenant, pretty high rank. And at some point, he is living in San Diego. And I think when he was 40 years old, he was taken to the hospital for a suicide attempt because he became distraught that he lost his Navy pension check. And it probably wasn't even a whole lot of money, but it just shows that he had some kind of, mental problems. And, he was so distraught he tried to kill himself over losing a check, which I'm sure he could have got, another one cut or something, but he was that distraught over just one pension check from the Navy. So, and he died pretty young too. I think he was 54 when he died, Paul Avery's biological father. And of course, I know Paul Avery's half-sister. I've got a message into her. I was going to ask her a couple more questions about, some of that mental illness, because that's, being his biological father, he might have, carried a lot of that over. His sister doesn't seem to have it. A very successful lawyer, actually. But just thought that was interesting, especially about Alan and Avery being born in the same maternity home. And I think it's the same one that Barack Obama was supposedly born in. No, I don't want to go down that road, but same one, Kapiolani maternity home. But anyway, from the mailbag, Metaphysical Logic was asking about the Zodiac victim that was involved in witchcraft. And told him that's got to be Darlene Ferrin because I'd heard that before. And that comes from, as far as I can trace it down, and I think it was from Michael Butterfield's site, Zodiac Killer Facts, that this all came from her sister, which is Pam Huckabee. Most people have seen Pam Huckabee, at least through the years, because she's the most outspoken sibling of any suspect. And Darlene has another sister. I think it's Linda. I don't remember her last name, but obviously Pam's the one people see the most, and she did a lot of shows, especially when the Grace Smith's movie came out, and the Zodiac was really popular. So she was on Geraldo. I think that was the show she was on when she made that claim about her sister being involved in witchcraft, and then said this guy named Lee, I think he was going by, that was stalking her, that went to the painting party that was supposedly over at Darlene Ferrin's house, and of course. I think it was kind of vetted out that the painting party, it either never happened or it was on a much smaller scale, because of course through the years this painting party wound up having everybody there, including the Manson family, which obviously didn't happen. I mean, I think Grace Smith tried to claim that Ron and Karen Allen were at that party, and they of course denied it, and everybody was going to the party at some point. And I think if it ever happened, it wasn't more than a few people, as far as I know. I think I asked Michael Butterfield directly about that one time. I can't remember what exactly he said. I think he told me it never happened at all, but I'm not sure. I don't want to be wrong. But anyway, you got to watch out for anything Pam Huckabee says. I mean, she's identified everybody as the Zodiac killer. She was big on Larry King for a while, then switched, and then, I think she said Dr. Dre was the Zodiac, and Carrot Top. I don't know. You name it, she's named him as the Zodiac. So she's just, unfortunately, just not a good source. So I don't think the witchcraft thing ever happened. And with Darlene, who knows about witnessing a murder, because, she dated around a lot. Everybody knows that. So when you get into the Darlene Ferrin connections, it's endless. It's truly endless. It is a true rabbit hole. And it's a tough one to go down. And people have been down that rabbit hole a million times. And nothing real substantial ever comes from it. All these connections and stuff like the story about the witchcraft and this guy named Lee. Who knows? Maybe John Chaney was out there spinning all this stuff. She worked at a restaurant. There was one guy stalking her. I can't remember his name. It was a Hispanic guy or something that was harassing her at work, but he obviously, didn't check out. I think he was really small too, so it wasn't even a player to be the Zodiac, so that just kind of went away. But anyway, this was something that comes out of Michael Butterfield's site, Zodiac Killer Facts, and it's talking about Lyndon Lafferty's book, The Silence Badge, and it says highlights of the story include, it says, Huckabee, of course that's Pam Huckabee, said Lafferty showed her a picture of the man in 1987, and he's talking about Lafferty's suspect, which is a guy that goes under the pseudonym Andrew Todd Walker, and it says Lafferty showed her a picture of the man in 1987, and she immediately recognized him as a man who had been stalking her sister when she worked as a waitress in a Vallejo restaurant. She was afraid of him. She told me he was bad, Huckabee said. According to the article, Pam also posed as a salesperson and went to the home of Lafferty's suspect. The reporter tells his colleagues that law enforcement has been somewhat dismissive of Lafferty and his claims. Some observers may have been skeptical skeptical of Pam's claims, as she has had a long history of telling stories about her sister and the so-called stalker. Many of these stories had been featured in the book Zodiac and other accounts which claimed that Darlene had known the Zodiac killer. The theory persisted, yet most investigators and researchers noted that the stalker stories had no basis in fact. And I agree with that. I mean, they just don't. I mean, it's just never gone anywhere. But this ties back in a little bit to what I'm going to talk about next, and it was also from the mailbag, because Dylan was asking about what they call the Zodiac deep real estate ad, and I know a lot of you guys may have already, know about this already. You probably know it better than I do, but there's a good thread on it on zodiacciphers.com, and the ad reads: Zodiac, your partner is in deep real estate. You're next. The Imperial Wizard can save you. Surrender to him or I'll terminate your case. R.A. And the ad was placed in the San Francisco Chronicle on August 26, 1976, to run for 1 week. So that's how the ad reads, and I hope I don't totally screw this up, because I don't know this real well, but basically the ad, starts Zodiac, so it looks like the thread is coming from the Zodiac. It says your partner is in deep real estate. Of course, that makes you think of 6 Feet Under, death threat, and then it says you're next. And then it reads, the Imperial Wizard can save you. Well, Imperial Wizard, is sounds like a Ku Klux Klan reference, because that's a title for a leader in the Ku Klux Klan, Imperial Wizard. So some people have tried to see where that could tie into this or not. And then it says, surrender to him or I'll terminate your case, R.A. Here on zodiacciphers.com, it mentions that there was a psychiatrist named Richard Adler that comes up in Lyndon Lafferty's book, The Silence Badge. And apparently this Richard Adler was a psychiatrist for the person of interest in Lafferty's book, who was Andrew Todd Walker. Of course, that's not his real name. But I think the book's about this judge that was dating Andrew Todd Walker's wife or something, and then there was some fallout over that, and then maybe this guy, Andrew Todd Walker, had some ties to the judge, and maybe that's why he wasn't caught, but it goes through all that. But anyway, that's one person brought up here by, was Richard Adler, coming out of the Lafferty's book. Another person mentioned where you can find R.A. in the Zodiac case is Arthur Lee Allen's younger brother, Ron Allen. Of course, his initials are R.A. I don't know how that would tie in, but I guess it could be considered. And also this ad ties into another card, as they call it, that was mailed on October 12th, 1970 to a guy named Edward Adams, and it reads, Edward Adams, the Zodiac is going to change the way of committing murders. I shall announce when I shall commit my murders. The Adamses are next. You taught me to mean it. Adams, you are next. Zodiac. Well, that ties into this other newspaper ad in the Chronicle, because this Adams guy was a psychiatrist too, just like Adler. So there's a tie there. Maybe they were both sent by the Zodiac or the same guy. Apparently, this guy Edward Adams later told Detective Toschi that the one that was sent to him in 1970 was from a psychiatric patient of his in Berkeley or something like that. So that kind of cast doubt on that correspondence. But that correspondence in 1970 looks a lot like the Zodiac's 13-hole punch card. So who knows? I mean, I have no idea if these were written by the Zodiac or not, these two. They could have been. But it's interesting how they could tie into some of the other suspects. So Ron Allen, I don't know. That seems kind of a stretch. But another person they tie into, and this is going back to the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, is Fred Manali. And I show a couple pictures of Fred Manali at the beginning of this. So the way Fred Manali ties into this whole thing is, and of course he's a suspect in the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, in the murder of Kim Wendy Allen, because let me read this. This will give a little more background on it. And this comes from G and Quasar's site. It's called Quester site. I like a lot of this dude's stuff. I really do. He's a little out there, but I like a lot of his Zodiac stuff and some other things he writes about. But he calls this article Dressed to Kill, Frida's Night Out, Sonoma Co-Ed Killer Part 3. And of course, Sonoma Co-Ed Killer is just another name for the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murderer. And this says, it was not until 2002. Finally, in that year, a name from within the legal grapevine of the North Bay area snuck out regarding a person of interest for being the Sonoma Co-Ed killer. Details as they come to us are thin. Moreover, the initial conduit was not a very good one. We have to assume that Robert Graysmith was accurate in his core recital of what he had heard, which is assuming a lot. Robert Graysmith tailored every bit of information he could get on the Bay Area murders to try to implicate the Zodiac killer. Graysmith has been repeatedly exposed for some of the grossest inaccuracy in the cases he has discussed. Some of his sources are little more than gossip, and upon this he tailored interpretation to make the Zodiac a viable suspect. In the case of the Sonoma co-ed murders, he tried to repeatedly link Arthur Lee Allen, his Zodiac suspect. That's very true. And this goes on to say, after reading his 1986 book, Zodiac, a woman who retired from the coroner's office in Sonoma County wrote to Graysmith. She told him of an auto accident in 1976 involving 41-year-old Fred Manali. He had taught creative writing at Santa Rosa Junior College, Napa Junior College, and even at San Quentin Prison near Larkspur. On August 24, 1976, he had been driving his van from his home west of Santa Rosa in Sebastopol, hopefully I'm saying that right. Highway 12, a two-lane rural but frequently traveled road, was and remains today the main route between these two historic cities. Suddenly his van veered and hit an oncoming car. In this head-on collision, Fred Manali had been killed. According to this informant, the sheriffs found drawings in the back of the van of women in sadomasochistic positions, listing them according to their sexual preference. One of them was Kim Wendy Allen. Fred also drew himself as well in drag and captioned himself as Frida. Manali kept a lock of hair in his wallet, but it did not match Kim Allen's. A backpack was also found, though Graysmith did not state that it matched Allen's. He only said it belonged to one of the victims. Then the article goes on to say, according to Graysmith, yet again, page 261 of Zodiac Unmasked, one investigator discovered that Frida's widow/ex-wife found more drawings showing that Frida liked bondage and was involved with other young women. Eventually, we get a source name from Graysmith to corroborate some of this. He spoke with Sergeant Steve Brown, Sonoma County Sheriff's. Brown admitted he had a photocopy of a couple of the sketches. Brown is quoted as saying, he drew Kim and he drew himself as Frida. He drew this other girl, and those two girls had classes with him. According to Graysmith, Chief Wayne Dunham of Santa Rosa Police thought that Frida had something to do with Allen's murder. This would seem reasonable. According to Brown, however, we get an insipid insight. One investigator thought that the teacher had this sex-slave thing going, whips and chains and all this weird stuff, and he was obsessed with big-breasted women. He probably taught Kim, and when she shows up dead, he became really obsessed with her. A weird dude. There's a keen mind at work. In all honesty, we have to cut Sergeant Brown some slack. He most likely didn't say it in that manner. It was so illogical. A rational mind above lower primate could not make such a statement. Graysmith often went out of his way to muddy the evidence against anybody but Arthur Lee Allen for most of the crime he tried to associate with Zodiac. If we are to accept at face value what Sergeant Steve Brown is quoted as saying, that he is implicitly saying that Fred Manali's drawings of his students in such sadomasochistic positions is purely from his memory of his students. Therefore, the drawings represent fantasies and not reflective of actual moments with them. This would make it quite coincidental that Kim Allen was killed in a sadomasochistic position. So it goes on a little further, but that's just some of the background, how this guy Manali got tied into possibly being the killer of Kim Wendy Allen because of the drawings and showing her and being her teacher. And how this all ties back into the real estate ad is that the real estate ad came out, I think, the day before Manali gets killed in this head-on collision. So people think that this was some kind of warning to the Zodiac from Manali that he was going to commit suicide in this car wreck, because this ad comes out the day after his fatal car wreck. Or it's the Zodiac threatening Manali and following through. Maybe the guys were partners and the Zodiac's going to, he's threatening Manali, and then Manali just winds up getting killed right before the ad comes out. I don't know. I think it's looked at both ways, but this did cause Manali to become a singular suspect in the Zodiac crimes, and I think Mike Morford really went through a lot of that, showed a lot of really similar handwriting between Manali and the Zodiac letters. There was a lot of good writing samples from Manali because he was a creative writing teacher, so he got a lot of those. And Manali used a lot of phrases that the Zodiac did, like "I shall" and things like that. A couple of other phrases, I can't remember exactly what they were. Some of it's pretty compelling. definitely worth looking at. I can see how he became a suspect, and obviously he's a suspect in the Kim Wendy Allen murder, so it's definitely worth looking at. I mean, there's definitely some similarities with him in the Zodiac. Some of his phrasing, the writing's pretty close. I agree. One thing against him though is he's a tall guy. He's really tall. He's a 6'3". All the photos of him, you can see those two at the beginning. They were taken earlier of him. I heard he got maybe a little filled out more before he was killed, but very tall, very thin. So that just does, and obviously doesn't match the Presidio composite at all. So that was strikes against him. But maybe he was working with somebody like Cheney or Allen, or who knows. I mean, it goes on and on. But I don't think he's a horrible suspect. He's better than some, but he's not the best either. But there are some coincidences. There's somebody wrote that his sister said that he stuttered really bad. Maybe that's why he sounded so monotone at Berryessa, because he was trying not to stutter. So it was this kind of weird cadence that he had. But he's out there. It's definitely something worth checking out. And I believe they also tried. There's some people have tried to tie in that real estate ad with the Zodiac suspect. Quavale, I don't even know how to say that guy's first name, the car dealer from San Francisco that becomes a suspect because he had to take his dog out to poop and he was close to the Presidio. I don't know, there's a book about that. It's the Hunt for the Zodiac is about him. So I don't know. It goes on and on with that ad, but I don't know. It's interesting. I'm glad he brought it up. Glad we talked about it a little bit. Definitely, I'm going to look into it a little bit more. And I also noticed, looking back over that, it was another one of these polls, and it was off of a Zodiac site, and I think it's fairly recent, and it's always pretty funny that Arthur Lee Allen always wins these online polls. I mean, I think if it was, and it's got to be with people that somewhat know the case, because there's other suspects in here that people that have only seen the Zodiac movie wouldn't have ever heard of. But in this poll, it had Arthur Lee Allen at 36% of the vote, and then it has number 2, other, meaning we don't know who the Zodiac is yet, and then third was Larry Kane. I love Larry Kane. If I was the Zodiac, anyway. And then after Kane, it's Donald Lee Booyak. And Booyak's just not a good suspect. I'm sorry. He had an 8th grade education. He's not going to know what a radian is. You could be the smartest guy in the world, but if someone doesn't teach you what it is, you're not going to know it. I mean, you could have a high IQ, but if you're in prison, you're not. I mean, the guy wasn't taking calculus in prison at Deer Lodge. That's really the only reason he was ever a suspect, is because he was in Deer Lodge prison. And Brian Hartnell supposedly said Deer Lodge prison. He didn't. He said Fernlock, and then he said Fern Feathers, and one of the police said, was it, because Brian said it was a double name, and then the guy suggested Deer Lodge, and Brian said, yeah, I think that's it. So that's where that comes from. But Booyak, he wore a 9.5 shoe, not a 10.5 like the wing walker. It's just, and he was in jail during the Sherry Joe Bates murder. So, which, I don't think that's Zodiac anyway. That shouldn't rule him out, but I just think he's pretty weak. But it's pretty funny that he comes in even with 9%. Gaikowski comes in 8%, and Kaczynski 2%, Bruce Davis 1%, Marshall 2%, and Jack Terrence at 4%. I think my friend Darren Schaefer over at the Cooper Vortex just did a show about D.B. Cooper and the Zodiac being the same person, which, he does those kind of things for fun. But Darren, I know you know better. They're not the same. But anyway, that's it for now. Definitely tune in next week. I'm going to do some pretty interesting stuff about how the name Arthur Lee Allen keeps popping up in the ciphers in some other ways, such as the Paul Avery correspondence. So definitely check that out. Thanks. Be sure to subscribe.